Welcome back to Chris and Retro. Welcome to the freezing cold version of Chris and Retro here in Western New York. Definitely not, we're not used to the cold weather yet, but we're getting there. Um, Today's video is going to be a follow up again on the Conor McGregor situation. And again, in the context of your collapse is closer than you think it is. And, again, going back to, as I've said in previous videos, about a year ago, I made a video that was one of my more popular videos related to Conor McGregor's story and my concerns about his addiction and what it was going to do for his life. It was met with varying responses. Many of them were really believing he was insulated based on the amount of money he had and his affiliations. One of the arguments that I had in that and subsequent videos is that that's fine, but addiction over time can take it all. The other portion of this that was a significant thing that came out of that video that I stated was no matter how powerful you are, you are also surrounded by powerful opponents and competition. And um, depending on the circumstances, they may want to take you out. And so I'll discuss some of that today and what I believe is a portion of what's happened to Conor and why it is that all of a sudden everything is falling apart when he's basically behaving like he has for a good portion of his career. Um, I'm going to start this video with just the context of where we currently are in Conor's journey with addiction. So we've seen Conor behaving poorly. We've seen him not performing well in his fighting career because his businesses were all taking off. He was a majority stakeholder in Proper 12 whiskey, majority stakeholder in a couple, I think in BKFC, which is a bare knuckle fighting championship. He's had a number of endorsements. And so he had a lot of financial revenue that was coming in outside of his fighting career. His fighting career has not been the significant portion of his income for a substantial amount of time. Now, that not to say that that was not the seed money, because it certainly was. His Floyd Mayweather fight alone has funded a lot of what he is today. In and above the draw and the money he made in the UFC. So he's had some things that have really financially benefited him in his fighting career. However, I would say the vast majority of it seems to have come from his other business ventures using his brand. They were using his brand, and it was a brand that was born out of a highly regarded champion that was a massive draw in the UFC at the time based on his performance while he was in the ring in his highlight. So first champ in terms of two different weight classes. His they called him Mystic Mac at one point, where he could predict the when he was going to win and how he was going to win. I mean, he had just a real strong following in the fighting and was an excellent striker. And really based on his moxie and his skill on the mic was a big draw. And as I've said before, he was a real inspiration for me as an amateur fighter in terms of how I would push through. And also in business, there was a lot of things he said and a lot of things he talked about were really important to me in my recovery in terms of a mindset in the recovery. But again, as addiction took over his life, it definitely changed the game. And I'm saying addiction without seeing that he's ever been evaluated or publicly stated he's an addict. But I would say that the earmarks of somebody that allows rampant substance use to be akin to his new brand over everything else. I would say that's got to be addiction, because otherwise a smart businessman, if it was just an intellectual decision, would put the partying at least make it more discreet if it wasn't something that was just really taking over. And so with that, I was under the assertion that things would start to fall apart, and that seems to be the case. So an acquaintance of mine who has been very loyal to me in starting this channel, and I think been tremendously gracious. And also I've known him to be gracious with some other smaller channels, and that's Jesse with Jesse on Fire. He's been following the story because he's a mixed martial arts content creator, but also speaks a lot about political matters as well. He's got he did a great video on the current state of Conor relative to money. And I'm going to share a clip with you, and then I'm going to make a few more comments about it. So I'll share that with you now and see what his perspective is on the Jesse on Fire YouTube channel.
Conor, what has he lost? He's lost his Proper 12 sponsorship. He's lost, I mean, you know what? Just go like this. All of them. Okay. He's lost every sponsorship. He's lost them all. All of his sponsorships are gone. Now, I want to put this in perspective. Okay. So I have someone in my family who.
So Conor is not just some dummy with this. I'm sorry, not Conor. Jesse's not a dummy on this stuff. I mean, he's been involved in some high-end businesses. He was on a reality show, 2 reality shows actually. One was for MVP Sports Betting. It was a sport betting app that didn't make it, but it really was a precursor for some of the ones you see now. And I think that a lot of the work he was doing there, you'll see that in new business ventures. They have novel ideas. Most of them don't make it, but the ones that do are wildly successful because of the work of the collective body of people trying it. And he was part of one that didn't make it with funding and some ownership financial improprieties that the owners of it had, and he was kind of the face of the company for a while, was not affiliated in any way with those financial improprieties. And in fact, I can relate to him. And one of the areas we relate most is he lost everything in that venue and had to figure out what to do with really no resources to fall back on. So I respect him a lot from that place. I also respect what he's done as a content creator. And so his genre has been mixed martial arts for the most part, but he's spilled over into other things. Thing with Jesse that's different than other mixed martial arts, he's not a former fighter. He is a businessman, and he does have context and looks at things in a more, I think, well-rounded way. And so I have a lot of respect for him. But having said that, I'm giving you that context because this is not just some, fighter that's coming out and having an opinion about somebody that he may have fought in the cage at one point. Jesse would never have been in that situation. He's speaking at it from, I think, a more total view than what I've heard from some other people. And so this is just a little clip giving you that context. When he says all of them, he understands the business behind all this stuff rather than just people, facing off inside of a cage.
Who was talking to me this last weekend about how much people get paid for social media posts, given their following. Okay. We specifically were talking about Sydney Sweeney. She said Sydney Sweeney makes.
So now the reason I'm playing this clip is because he's going to go through some math here that gives you the larger implications of some of the drain that's coming. I'm not talking, I think that all too often these types of things where we'll still say Conor's as a billionaire is insulated or whatever his net worth is, which I'm not 100% sure. But we think that, he can pay for everything. Well, the problem is you can only pay for stuff as if you got stuff coming in. And what Jesse's really focusing in on here is what he's losing from a revenue perspective. Having said that, keeping in mind that he once was majority stakeholder of Proper 12 and sold all that. So that's not residual income for him. The sponsorship of Proper 12 absolutely was. The notoriety of being a UFC fighter absolutely is. However, his behavior around UFC, he's not showing up for fights. And he's been many years since he's fought, and his last 5 fights were not that spectacular. And he's resulting in a long layoff with injury. He's had multiple doping events where he's been tested, and I'm not really sure what the results are of those, but it's interesting to me that his fights keep getting delayed, and he's still got 2 on the contract there. Those are revenue generating opportunities, and he'll make a lot of money in it, but it's nowhere near going to fill the gap of some of the things that he's losing.
Makes about $1 million or more every time that she posts about a brand. She said that she knew for sure that she was paid $10 million for this partnership that she did with this company where she did 5 Instagram posts, $10 million. Okay. Conor is the face of Proper 12 and all these other brands, right? So what you can absolutely rest assured is that Conor probably had anywhere between 8 and 12 million a month coming in from those sponsorships.
So he had 8 and 12 million a month coming in from those sponsorships. So with that, with 8 and 12 million a month coming in from sponsorships, that's pretty substantial amount of income coming in, and that's all gone. So what Jesse's describing here is not only to lose the sponsorships, but all the social media presence by being part of those sponsorships. That's also revenue. When he mentioned somebody that was just being mentioned. Now, if you're a headline like Conor always has been, he's losing between 8 and 12 million dollars a month in revenue just from the social media portion of it at all by losing those sponsorships. Forget about all the endorsements and everything else that comes along with it. And while that was going, I did look up his current estimated net worth, and you can't really trust this stuff on Google, but I just figured I'd give perspective, is about $200 million. So for $200 million, and now you're losing $12 million a month, $8 to $12 million a month just in social media payout from endorsements. Now you can start to see the problem of that $200 million, how much of this was from his personal brand. So now within the 24 to 48 hours after the most recent civil case that he lost related to an alleged sex assault, he is now finding a massive hole in the income going, and we'll get further into that. So we got a 200 million net worth person that's just now lost all that revenue that Jesse, I think, very well described in a way that I hadn't heard yet. He was fined $250,000 and another $1.2 million in two different fines. Two portions of his settlement related to this case that was just he was found liable for from a 2018 event. So that was 2018. Now, keep in mind, Conor has not been keeping, as my mom would say, his nose clean throughout the years. So in April 2019, He was in a bar brawl, which you may, if you follow Conor, you know that he got himself in a bar brawl with a older man, punched him, and that cost him only about $1,000. But they swept it under the rug and dealt with that. So it started as $1,000, and then in 2022, this known issue where he lost his license due to reckless driving. So that was another hit, but I don't know what the money was around that. Probably not a big amount of money, but it was still another event based on carelessness and ego. And I would suspect in that case, it wasn't substance use because he didn't get any additional charges, or maybe something happened behind the scenes that made that not prominent. Then he had attacking Khabib's team's bus in New York. That was a criminal charge, resulted in, I think, a $50,000 fine, but there was also criminal charges associated with that. They had implications that were part of a rap sheet that didn't turn into felony charges, but could have. He has had, since 2018, a number of alleged instances with females, including one recently within the last year at the Houston Rockets basketball game, where there was an allegation of an event with a female in a bathroom there, all around the same earmarks: heavy drug use, forced interaction, I guess we'll put it. And so if you look at the amount of criminal cases that he's been named in that have not resulted in a criminal charge, doesn't mean that he does not get himself into more financial trouble because of it. So he got the behavior that's getting him there, which appears to be heavily around substance use. Then you have the loss of endorsements now because of one he was found guilty on. One that was in 2018. He's had a number of allegations since that weren't criminal charges, but this one wasn't a criminal charge, but yet it resulted in a massive loss of revenue, not only from the specific fine itself for that person, but also all the other endorsements that went away. Now, on top of it, I have to think that that's going to set a precedent for all these other cases that were either paid hush money or maybe going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. And that's possibly where the panic is coming from. Because if you saw his face when he left the courthouse and then he clipped, it was clearly more than just a $1.2 million deal that he dodged a criminal bullet on. He clearly understood the implications of it in the world that we live in. And forget about the world we live in. If you're doing that to women, you deserve to have every single thing taken from you. So even if this case, which is currently arguable whether it was legitimate or not, if it was consensual or not, there's a lot of debates on both sides, including Conor's own fiance and mother of his children. It still calls into question, how many times has he done things that hasn't led to this yet? It's still out there as a possibility because the precedent has been set. So the other portion too is these crazy drug and alcohol public behavior, even at BKFC, which he's a majority stakeholder in. Now, bare knuckle fighting championship, I can't imagine they're going to have any problem with somebody's morality being an owner based on the nature of the sport. But, he's seen almost every single time heavily intoxicated or substance affected. You see his grandiose call-outs all the time of different fighters, but yet he never shows up for his fights. So all these have the earmark in context of somebody that's really spinning out of control. And the insulation that we've all believed he has is his prominence of his name and who he is and what the draw he is as a fighter, and the financial wherewithal he has around him. And then the third one that's kind of not mentioned as much is his affiliation with some powerful Irish organizations within Ireland. And all those things fall in the context of a drain in the tub of Conor's life. Now, one thing that is important to note here, and I did say, is that where Conor's collapse could come from all this is not necessarily from this drain, because his financial power, he might find a way using his name that wasn't so tarnished before, just he was known as a wild man. Now that's absolutely not supportable because of the things that he's been found guilty of, not just accused of, but found guilty of. Now he puts himself in a massive risk. And I can't help but notice the correlation, because one of the things I said was there are also equally powerful and financially wherewithal people, and you're only as strong as the opponent that wants to undermine you. Now, if you're a fighter and your income's coming from fighter and you do these things, we see it with NFL players and other sports all the time, that they do egregious things and they turn around and their career is fine. If he was just a fighter and this income was all coming from fighting, I would say that probably they'd find a way to resurrect him, and his fans were fickle. And the very next time he has an exciting fight and takes back the championship and they put a big storyline around it with a promotion, he probably could come back on his feet. The challenge is this. He announced he was running for political office. As soon as he did this, he put himself in a pool of sharks that we've seen with Donald Trump and a bunch of others. It doesn't take much for somebody to wipe you out. And so now he put himself in the area of his opponents now were the media, non-fighters that would be voters, political champions. So I say champions like he was a fighting champion. They're champions of the political realm. Um, Motivated people to use his vice as targets, and he's obviously not steering away from his vice. And not only is he not steering away from his vices, he's doing them publicly and posting them on social media, and others are posting them on social media as well, including a recent hair pulling incident with BKFC of a fighter with his fiance standing right there who's clearly not happy with what's going on. So he's lost sponsorships, he lost a lawsuit, he's got fines, he's lost opportunities for sure. So where's the resurrection come? Well, for one, it's going to have to come from just putting it in park, become a family man for a while, maybe get back in the ring. I don't know, but somehow he's just got to stop all this. He's got to recognize for himself that his fame and his money and everything is gone. The insulation of that is gone. He may still have the money, maybe still surviving, maybe still a millionaire at the end of all this. I don't know. We don't know how this is going to play out, but I do know that he can go to zero and less than zero if he continues this. There's only so many things you could do. Let's just say that he's recklessly doing something and somebody dies. He's going to prison. We look at Cain Velasquez. Cain Velasquez was doing what I would consider to be an honorable thing, defending his child. No, he went over the top by the amount of rounds he put into somebody to defend his child, and had a quote unquote innocent bystander impacted by it. Excuse me, but his was in some camps noble what he was doing, and he still has lost everything and is now facing a substantial prison time. Now you take somebody like this who hasn't taken anybody's life yet, but has taken their mental health and their safety, and is starting to see things fall apart. So where's his brand going to rebuild? Well, it's going to rebuild, for one, by stopping what he's doing. This recent blow up is coming from a 2018 event. Now, I'm not a math guy, but that's over 6 years ago. So having said that, how many things have happened in this last 6 years is he's really just unraveled and before our very eyes, and we just were waiting for him to stop and get back in the ring, and everybody thought it all settled down. Well, it appears that he's got bigger problems now at this point. My argument, and I've said it before, and I will say it again, he's not done yet. And I say on both sides, as we say in the show, it's closer than it appears. His total collapse is still collapsing. He's still in the process of collapsing. There's still way more to fall. Zero is still a ways away, and it's coming rapidly faster. I even used the analogy on 2 different videos about the train starting to chug along, and then it gets going down the track and you can't stop it. He's on that train and it's getting a ton of momentum. So the other side of that coin is that also closeness that appears is hope, but hope can only happen if he stops the behavior that's at the core of all this. And if it's substance use, even a two division champion and one of the highest draws in mixed martial arts history, and a prominent businessman that leverages his name to great millions of dollars from a journeyman plumber or journeyman tradesman, you can lose all of that. But at the same time, addiction can be stopped, and it can rebuild all that as well, because he could also become the greatest voice for recovery ever and help him in that way, even if it's just from a business perspective, be more noble than what is currently being looked at. Right now, having enemies in the sport he was in was a good thing. It was still a draw. People would want to see him lose. He still got paid. And this, when people want to see you lose, you're not getting paid because there's no pay-per-views for assault. There's no pay-per-views for a political opponent that needs to be washed out so that a current political system can stay in place. I'm sharing all this with you to share with you just the ongoing illustration, and I don't want to keep beating this dead horse, so to speak, but it is absolutely living in front of us what I've been saying all along. Your high-risk living can lead to total collapse. It's closer than you think it is, and it doesn't matter who you are. Addiction takes from everybody and won't stop till it has it all, or you stop. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter. And we're seeing it live play out right before us. And we probably don't even have 1/5 of the details of everything that's falling apart behind the scenes there. You know, what's going on with his kids, and they're watching this unravel. They don't know the greatness of him. They're too young. They don't know that great champion. All they're seeing is a father unravel. I hope that his pride gets put in check. I hope that his addiction and that his support system around him has the words to use to convince him to be a champion of recovery and a champion of rebuilding his life versus being a champion of gratification, I guess would be the best words. I think there's more to come. I think this story is going to continue to unravel. If it's as it goes, I'm going to continue to illustrate what I've been saying and try to get us to the place to realize that no matter how high you are in life, getting high as an addiction will take you down eventually in a way it's going to be very painful. It's a spiritual thing as well, and the spiritual doesn't really give a crap about your money. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Subscribers continue to climb here, man. I'm getting really excited about how things are going here. I love and appreciate your support. I'm going to do everything I can to stay warm first here in Western New York, but I'm going to do everything I can to stay out of trouble for sure. And I hope you do too.